Hello, and welcome to the Student Ministry Conversations podcast with your hosts, Brent Aiken, David Pruitt, and Russell Martin. This podcast is all about equipping, encouraging, and inspiring youth pastors weekly with topics that are brought to the table by youth pastors from all over the world. And now, here's your host for this week, David Pruitt.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. If this is your first time listening to us, we want to welcome you and invite you over to our website, www.studentministryconversations.org, where you can find all of our previous episodes, show notes, blog articles, and much more. Our goal is that you are inspired, encouraged, and the things that you hear on this podcast would equip you to be a better student pastor for the church that you are serving. All right, let's get to it. Today, I have the extreme honor and pleasure of sitting down with a youth pastor that I have had the honor of serving with for nearly 9 years now. This is Cody Moore, who is the student pastor at Northside Baptist in Victoria, Texas. What's up, man?
What's up, man?
Hey, man, it's good to see you. It's been far too long, even though we talk a lot. It's usually over the phone, so we don't actually get to see each other as much.
Yeah, so I hadn't seen the beard until this last episode, man. It's going well.
Hey, yeah, man. I actually trimmed it down again, so one of these days I might just let it go altogether.
Yeah.
So, well, cool, man. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Cody Moore. I've been in youth ministry for 16, 17 years now. Been bounced around in Texas, was in Northeast Texas, went out to West Texas, God's country, and served for 4 years. Spent 11 months at a church in LaGrange and have been the last 3.5 years here in the Crossroads in Victoria. Love our church and our pastor and staff here. It's been a great change of events going from a church, running a couple hundred to coming to a church of about 600. So been happily married for 17 years and have 4 beautiful kids. They all take after their mother, thank goodness. So I have so I have a 8th grader. It's fixing to be a freshman. We missed freshman orientation to be at church last night, so
let's go.
Got a 6th grade boy. We may be doing football next year. Excited about that. And then we got a 2nd grade little girl. And then we have the runt of the litter. Our littlest one is 3 years old and keeps us on our toes and just enjoy doing life, man. We busy. We just hold on for dear life most times.
I believe it, man. It still blows my mind that she's going to be a freshman. My goodness.
I know.
Man, I remember when the 3rd and 4th kid were born and they don't feel like they should be that old already.
Yeah. Well, Corley was born there in Snyder.
Yeah.
So, from little Snyder to having one in Victoria, and it's been a wild ride, man. They're good. I love the balance, or trying to figure out the balance of going back for my master's. My wife has gone back to school, gone back to work full time, and now having all 4 kids, and they're all over the place. It's just a great time, man. It just, you're always doing something, so you're never bored.
That's it, man. So tell us a little bit about some things that you're passionate about.
So over the last few years, I've really, really become passionate about trying to connect and mentor and coach other ministers. Little backstory: I was let go from a church, and it just wasn't a good fit. Leadership wanted to go a different direction. We loved the church, loved being there with the people, and we both mutually agreed, hey, we're going to go separate ways, and we had some time to start looking. We ended up here at Northside, and probably, 3 months after we were here, I had a buddy that was let go at another church. And I was like, man, what's going on? Like, God, why? Like, I got all emotional and worried and reached out to him. And then I started seeing guys on Facebook with different groups that I'm a part of that were struggling in their ministries, were upset, were always, asking questions. And I'd reach out, hey, let's get together and talk. And man, just out of nowhere, God just started putting more and more people in our hearts and our lives and in our path. And, um, been something natural. We just kind of have stepped into and loving on other youth pastors, loving on people that are in ministry, just encouraging them. And I say coaching, but, I mean, it's nothing formal, but it's just that being with one another, mentoring one another. And God's just really opened up some amazing doors over the last few years with that. So, uh, doesn't make me less passionate about youth ministry,
Yeah.
but I feel like I've become more passionate about people that do youth ministry, if that makes sense. Still love youth, still love all the crazy things we do and camps. And we just did a D-Now weekend with 5 other churches. And, like, shoot, I'll stay up all night. I'll stay up all weekend. Let's do it, but God's just put this new desire, new passion to love on ministers.
So tell us a little bit about that. What does it entail, this whole coaching thing?
Well, it's looked different for different people that I've been a part of. Some people, they're coming out of a trauma or a hurt at a church, and they need someone that will be honest with them and love them. I normally sit down with folks. We just helped another church start back their youth ministry after 25 or 30 years, and
Wow.
started walking with these 2 boy moms that are like, hey, we have these 3 guys that come to our church, and we want to do this. And that started back in the summer. So each group that I've gotten to work with has been a little bit different. Some with a hurt or a habit or a hang up, totally still in a CR thing there.
Yeah,
But
totally.
being able to walk through with them what their hurt is or what their hang up is or the things that they've been going through. Some of them, it's been starting over in ministry. Some of them, it's been for the first time. They've had no formal training. They don't know what youth ministry will look like in their context. So just walking with people that are currently in ministry or have hit a pause in ministry, and just being able to love on them, to see what their strengths are. I've used strength finders with a lot of these folks, used the DISC method, looked at a lot of Enneagram stuff just to kind of help them figure out who they are. I love using with our adults the sweet spot from Leader Treks, and have used that with a few people. Just finding out who they are, what they're about, what they're doing, and then trying to figure out how to help them in whatever ministry context they're in. Normally, it has been in youth ministry. So,
Yeah, man, for sure. So you talked about looking at it from different stages, and it really, I would say, it depends on the relationship with the particular student pastor. So walk us through that. What does the relationship look like for you?
so man, I had a guy that called me this summer. I didn't know him from Adam. He didn't know me. Like, it was weird to sit down and kind of talk to this guy because there was no relationship. And the thing that had gone on, the struggle that he was going through currently, was probably self-inflicted. And
Okay.
I just started asking him some questions, and he got real defensive. And I was like, hey man, listen, I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to criticize you. I'm here to help. I'm here to love on you, to walk with you hand in hand through whatever you're going through. And whoever gave you my number, man, they know we have a similar story or something like that. So, I just want to be here to help you. And I realized real quick that having a cold call with somebody isn't necessarily the best thing when it comes to coaching, because I've had some awesome coaches, mentors in my life. There's a guy there in Snyder, Carl Smith, man. Like, you couldn't ask for a better mentor. We would sit down every week and have breakfast together on Tuesday mornings. And without the relationship, I don't know if I would have listened to some of the hard things he needed me to hear, that God wanted me to hear to pull me through a certain time or a certain thing going on in my life. So, man, I really want to sit down with people, get to know them, know their ministry, know their heart, know their family, get to know how their relationship is with their spouse or significant other if they're not married, and just really get to know them as a person, because I truly believe that our DNA affects the ministries that we lead. We lead from who we are, the experiences we've had. So, I really want to sit down and get to know people before we start the coaching process. After we get to know each other, there's lots of questions that I have. Why is this going to benefit you, sitting down with somebody that maybe has been there, done that, maybe somebody that's a little bit further ahead than they are in the ministry, and then really try to identify maybe 3 things that they do really, really well, and 3 things that they need to work on. And then we start building some action steps to improve, or sometimes improve their behavior or their outlook on ministry, or maybe it's 3 parts of their ministry they need to work on. So after we build that relationship, we start spending a lot of time back and forth, asking questions, emailing, texting. I literally at 9:30 last night was laying down in bed because I'm old, and my phone rang, and it was one of the people I've been working with over the last few months. And it was like, hey, nothing big, I just needed some advice for this. And jumped on the phone for about 45 minutes with them. And a lot of that one-on-one, where you are in ministry, in the trenches, in the things that you're doing. So yeah, that's kind of why we do what we do.
Man, that's huge. That's so helpful, because I completely agree with you. I think if you try to, it's like mentoring ultimately. And when you try to mentor somebody that you haven't built a relationship with, it's so difficult because they really don't understand the context that you're coming from. And on the other side of it, you don't understand the context that they're going through, or they're coming from. And then one of the other things that I was kind of thinking about is, not to point out that you're old, because, well, you are. But imagine, say, a brand new youth pastor who's maybe 20, 21 years old, isn't married, doesn't have any kids, that kind of thing, comes to you, who is a seasoned vet. I mean, you've been doing this for well over 15 years. You've been at several churches, you've been at small churches, you've been at large churches, you've got 4 kids of your own, one of which is in youth, another one that's about to be in youth. So you would ultimately be in 2 very different places, but yet doing the same kind of job. So what does that look like? What does that relationship look like?
Man, the thing that popped into my mind as you were talking is, I don't know who the statement's from, but just like we do with our students, if you want to discipline or call a student out, you have to have a relationship. If you don't, it breeds rebellion. They automatically, man, this guy doesn't know me, he doesn't care. And I think that's that same relationship. Yes, I may be 10 years ahead of somebody or 15 years ahead of somebody in the experience. When I came into youth ministry, I was married, or I was engaged, part-time church, or part-time pay, full-time work,
Yeah.
and I was bivocational. I was going to college. Like, there are all these things in my life. And man, if I look back now, how differently I would have done things. And I try to put myself back in their shoes, and building that relationship, when there has to be things that we talk about, man, that wasn't a good move, or hey, have you ever thought about the other side of this? Like, your
Mhm.
senior pastor is like now stressed out because you said this. And like, and when you have that relationship, you're able to call, you're able to say the things out of love, out of grace, but you are in different spots. So every once in a while, it's a conversation of, oh man, I remember when I messed up like that. Man, the pastor was ready to fire me, and all the deacons or elders were mad, and I had parents upset at me, and this is how I walk through those things. Then you get a guy that maybe he's been in youth ministry for a while, or a lady, been in youth ministry for a while, but then they have their first kid come into ministry. Whew, that's hard. I mean, it's tough. Like,
Mhm.
now, not only are you dad, but you're youth pastor. And if you're not a good dad, but you're a great youth pastor, maybe you're not a great youth pastor, but you're a good dad. Like, it's hard. Like, I have two, one that's an eighth grader, one that's a sixth grader. And man, if somebody would have given me a book for dummies for youth pastors and dads, like, man, it would have been a lot better. But I think it's important for and how biblical this is, that older generations pour into the younger generations. We take our knowledge that has become wisdom and pour that out. A tomato is a fruit, but if you didn't know it was a fruit and somebody told you it was a fruit and you decided to throw a tomato into your fruit salad, that wouldn't be very good. So I've kind of taken that mindset, like, let's build that relationship. Let me pour into people that are younger than I am. But I think there's a key there that we miss too. Man, we've been at it for a while. I've been in youth ministry for 15 years, and it's changed. Like, we're fixing to make the jump from being all together on Wednesday nights to junior high and high school ministry on midweek. And I'm calling younger youth pastors being like, hey, I see you did this. How does it work for you? What's this? What's that? And they may be in youth ministry for 5 or 10 years, but I think that process goes both ways. I think some people would say it's probably better that an older, pours into a younger, but us old guys need to have a kick in the pants every once in a while with what we're doing.
Oh,
So I think it goes both ways.
I completely agree with that. I mean, I think about too, like, if you've done youth ministry for any amount of time, it's like, how many times have we been teaching and a student, a 13-year-old kid who maybe is the kind that, let's put this nicely. Maybe they're the kind that likes to push buttons, and all of a sudden they ask you this question that just completely and radically moves you, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I've never even thought of that. And of course you're right on stage and everyone's expecting you to have an answer, and you have to be honest in that situation, but like, you know what, I'm not sure, let me think about that, let me pray about that, and can I get back to you next week? So like, if a 13-year-old student can knock us off of our pedestal, so to speak, I think it's the same thing with a young youth pastor who comes in. Maybe they don't have the experience, but they may come in with a whole lot of energy and passion and excitement that a lot of us old guys maybe don't have as much anymore, for a lot of different reasons. Because, and you alluded to this earlier, when I think about when I started ministry to now, I was a kid, and I'm not even like joking. Like, I was legitimately a kid when I started, and so I was in my second church job at 19. And had just started dating, that kind of thing. So like, it's really interesting when you look back on it and where I am now. And man, things change when you get married, and then they change again when you start having kids, and different stages and stuff like that. And so I think you're absolutely right. It has to go both ways. There's so much that can be learned on both sides.
Yeah, man, I love the fact I get to do what I do with teenagers. And you're so right. You have that sixth grade boy in your youth group that you have to meet with energy, and you have to match their energy. And, there's some days, man, I wake up and I'm hurting. I'm a psoriatic arthritis patient and, on medication and doing these things. And my body just can't keep up with some of these kids at youth camp. And I keep thinking, God, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Why am I still banging my head up against the wall, doing all-nighters? And then I see these young guys and I'm like, man, to be you again and have hair and, have 2 good knees and not hurt and everything. And to have the energy and the passion to do what you're doing. And man, I think it was my second church that I was at. Like, that was the easiest time to do ministry. I was just old enough above our kids that, they looked at me as an adult, but I was still on their level, energy wise and everything. But I wish somebody would have grabbed me when I was at my second church and just said, hey, focus on this. The Great Commission is go and make disciples. And man, I was doing the fun and games. Our house was always open for the kids to come to. Like, it was just easy to do ministry. We had one singular school that we had kids coming from, so we could go to the high school, we could go to the junior high. Now we have 4, 5 junior highs, 2 high schools, public, private schools, all these things pulling us in different directions with the kids. But I still have that main focus of, hey, as a youth pastor, my job is to come alongside parents, to help disciple students, and to prepare students to do the work and parents to do the work of the ministry. And if I would have had somebody sit me down and tell me that and show me how to do that whenever I was 19 years old, dude, you know, I was ready to go fight hell with water pistols, the El Cheapo Dollar General water pistols. I would have gone in there with fire hoses instead. And, I mean, to see these guys and ladies with this passion to serve students and just to help them direct, hey, it's not all fun and games. What you win them is what you win them to. So be balanced, have fun, laugh and joke. Our pastor came into a Wednesday night and we were talking about putting on the altar some things that maybe have hurt us. And he was like, man, you had them on the ropes. You had them right in the right spot, but then you popped a joke to kind of lighten the mood a little bit and you let them out of it. And, it was just like, man, you're right. And I love my pastor for that. He's pouring into me. I'm pouring into students. He has a high school student in our student ministry. His older son's graduated as a youth pastor. I was talking on the phone with him during our rad weekend just last week about, what they're fixing to do. And it's this ebb and flow. The older is pouring into you, you're pouring into younger, but then you're also pouring into ministry around you. Like, you're not that much younger than I am, but when we were in Snyder, like, we literally bought your youth area and turned it into offices before I came there. And there was
Still
just
mad
a
about
rough, I know, man, I'm sorry. But like, literally our offices were divided by a wall, a street, a playground, and another wall. And, we would show up at each other's houses. We would show up at each other's offices. And like, my staff knew you knew my staff. And they were just, literally our secretary would be like, hey, David, what's going on, man? Cody's back there. And, just doing life together.
Yeah.
But I could call you on your junk. You could call me on mine. And like, iron sharpening iron. And man, there was times that you called me out on things and I was like, man, I should have caught this. Like, I was so totally hyper focused on this and I should have been looking at the big picture. So
Yeah.
I don't think coaching or mentoring is one direction. It has to be both ways. But being the guy that's been there, done that, and maybe got himself in trouble or did something and learned the hard lesson, like, it's good to be able to tell that younger guy, hey man, you got this. Don't be mad, don't be frustrated. We all got that kid that needs Ritalin or needs something. We all got that kid that's disgruntled. We all have that kid that is going to ask off the wall questions. I mean, but dude, it's okay. That's part of life. Whenever I interviewed here, I told our pastor, I love junior high boys. And that sounds weird. Like, who loves junior high boys? They stink. They're going through puberty. They're all over the place. And about a year into this, he's like, man, you really do love junior high boys. I was like, yeah, I really love junior high boys. Can you teach another youth pastor how to love junior high boys? I don't know. I'll try, So
yeah,
I think it's always that constant sharpening your own self and making sure you have all the right tools in the toolbox, but also making sure that, hey man, I've been there and I don't want you to have to go through the hard knocks that I had to, but before you get there, or burnout, man, you realize how many young youth pastors don't make it 18 months at a church, 2 years at a church, and youth need consistency. And a lot of times you talk to those guys and it's 2 years in and they're done. They've gone through their bag of tricks. They're trying to figure out, they go to the next church and 18 months they're gone to another church because they only have 18 months worth of tricks. And really and truly, it's about, you should have been spending 18 months just getting to know your kids and loving on them. and
Mhm.
teaching the word consistently and just becoming consistent in their life. It's those things that, like, you want to smack some of those guys around, but you also know
Mhm.
they just don't know. They've
Right.
they've never had him. They don't teach this in seminaries. They don't
No,
teach
they
this
don't.
at Bible college. So yeah.
Well, and you bring up a really good point there. You've been in your church 3.5 years, yeah?
Mhm.
I've been in my church for nearly 9. Um, and one of the things that you and I used to talk about is it used, and I do think this is in the past, is it used to take 3 years to establish a ministry, to get the true trust, because there is so much turnover. I mean, when I came here to Snyder, for some of our students that were even juniors and seniors, I was youth pastor number 4
Yeah.
for them. And in my mind, it's like, that's crazy, because I had one youth pastor growing up, until when he left, I took over,
Yeah.
And so it's one of those situations where it's like, there was no consistency in this church, but I think, back then in Snyder, there really wasn't consistency at any church. We both kind of
Dude,
came into that.
if you
And
remember too, it wasn't just churches. Like, we had 5
yeah, it was,
principals in 5 years, and I
mhm,
think it was 6 principals in 8 years.
yeah,
The whole I was lucky and blessed to be involved in the church that I grew up in. I had 2 youth pastors, Bob Billups and Don Allensworth, and they had a huge staff around them. And I can still remember back. I just saw Bob at Conclave this year, and I was surprised he knew me by name. He's like, "Man, I've been watching you on Facebook," and he was still that youth
awesome.
pastor to me. 20 years later, I just reconnected with Don Allensworth again for the first time a few months ago, and we're talking about it. He's like, "You were one of 3 guys that prayed for my brother-in-law whenever this was going on."
Wow.
So having 2 youth pastors in my life was big. Having one in your life, I met a guy this summer, the the director and assistant director at the Generate camp we went to in Glorietta. They were husband and wife, and their youth pastor that married them had his youth group there working rec.
Wow.
And it was just, the consistency was huge. But yeah,
Yeah.
trust, vulnerability. I mean, you go through and you just think there were lots of walls you had to knock down, even with church members. Like, I remember there were people that we knew. They're like, "Oh, it won't matter. In a couple of years, y'all be gone anyways."
Yeah. We were
You
told,
know,
I remember on day one, there was several that said, hey, why should I, it literally said, why should I trust you? You'll be gone in a year.
yeah,
And I'm like, I could look back on it and like, man, there were times though, a year in, 2 years in, 3 years in, where I was like, man, I don't know. And I felt, I never looked at a smaller church like a stepping stone to go somewhere bigger. I've never been that guy. I firmly believe that you should bloom where you're planted, and this is where God has called me to be. And I don't believe He's called me anywhere else.
yeah,
And but I think one of the things you see is, and my conversations with other youth pastors, especially younger ones, is that number one, there isn't a whole lot of equipping, especially on the business side of youth ministry. You're right. I mean, it's not all fun and games. There's, you know, it's amazing to me how many student pastors have no idea how to present a budget, and a leadership team will eat you alive if you don't present a decent budget, especially a church that might be struggling
yeah,
financially. And so that can be a thing. And so, 2 years in, you're seeing student pastors that are just getting eaten alive by their churches, by their students, their parents. And the saddest thing, as I've been kind of looking around, a lot of the people that I've known in youth ministry are no longer, not only are they no longer youth pastors, many of them don't go to church at all. And
yeah,
I think the thing that I go back to is, we who've been doing ministry for a while, we've got to step it up and be there for those who are struggling, because there are
yeah,
so many that are, and they're good youth pastors who care and are passionate, and they just need a little bit of guidance, if nothing else, just to have somebody that they can vent to when
yeah,
things get difficult, or you know they've run out of material, or one of the big things I see so much is like, and I've even had this very conversation, is post-COVID youth ministry
Mm,
makes so like no sense.
yep.
I've literally had to burn several playbooks and try again, and really lean on student leaders because, what worked for so long, just doesn't work now. Um,
Yeah. Well, and I grew up in Tyler at Green Acres. It is the place to be. Um, my youth ministry was cultural Christianity. It was culturally relevant to be a Christian. And
yeah.
by the time I got into college in '04, '05, I started seeing the transition from big events to small events. It made sense. Like, this is a thing that drives your week to week. And you go to camp, you do a D now or a retreat somewhere. You had these two big events. And then, now it's the, hey, I'm going to meet you at a coffee shop and let's sit down and talk. I've got 3 boys that a few weeks ago, I am meeting every Friday at 4 o'clock, and we are sitting down and talking life. And where are you in the word? How was your week? Where are you struggling? And God laid 3 boys on my heart that are very tender,
Hmm.
that are very quiet. But man, you see them and you see their love for other people. And it's like, man, there's a leader. And maybe they don't see that yet. I think one of the big deals in coaching, and you alluded to this, like planning a budget. How does budgeting look? Do you plan a price per student for the year that you're going to invest? And I know whenever you use that word invest, some people automatically go to, okay, we're going to put this much money in. This is how many more kids are going to come. Investing in ministry is not you're never going to have a return. You're always going to be
Yeah.
behind. But like, what works for your group? That's one thing I say. I'm blessed to be at a church that youth, children's, and missions are always funded real well. I mean, the amount of money that my church gives me for our D Now weekend is crazy absurd, man. And I am so blessed. Like, I'm sitting in a facility right now that literally whenever I came, we revamped it. And there were hiccups in the way because I didn't realize the process I needed to go through and the people I needed to be involved. So now I sit down with people and I'm like, okay, so what do you want to do? What do you think that costs per student? What are the things that you want to invest in? Like, our youth are more social now than they ever have been, but unfortunately it's behind their screen doing this. I got B-reel. I don't even know what B-reels are about. I took a picture last night with my B-reel in my bed, and it's just dark, and I said sleepy time, and all my kids are cracking up at me. Listen, I'm the old man, I don't know, but I can sit down with you in 15, 20 minutes, find out what percentage of your congregation is youth, and what you should be spending per kid for an event. And it's something over time I have figured out. I mean, I have a spreadsheet. This is what it's going to cost me to do this event. This is what we're going to cover as a church. This is what we have to have covered by students and their families. Well, what if a student can't do that? What if a family can't do that? All right, how do we have partnerships with family? We do no fundraising.
Mhm.
Absolutely no fundraising. And we used to be in churches that we would fundraise 15, 20, 30, $40,000 for camp. And, here we don't do that. And luckily we have a church that pours into our students in our church. Like sitting down and learning budget, learning programming. I mean, it's not just about, hey, man, this is what I feel like I'm learning, and this is what I feel like you need to learn. Like, leadership, if you look at the pyramid of leadership, the lowest level of leadership is self-interest. The highest form of leadership is self-sacrifice. So it's not about what I enjoy doing, it's about what is the best thing I can do to, one, provide a safe place for youth to go, a place where they want to invite their friends, and a place where my students can do ministry. Our student ministry isn't our ministry. Our church's ministry to students. Our student ministry is their ministry to themselves and peers. We're here to guide and help them and support them, So our programming looks different. We're on a regular Wednesday night, we do a game, worship, youth worship band, where we have a guy over it, a message. Sometimes I'm wondering, am I asking questions or answering questions that students are asking? And then we land the plane with a small group. Sometimes that small group is, hey, seniors, raise your hands, go grab 4 people and answer these questions. Sometimes it's adult leaders. So what does your programming work? I figured out this year, having high school and junior high doesn't work anymore. They need to be met on 2 different levels. So our program is changing. We're learning, we're growing. We went from 80 kids at our D Now weekend to 140 kids. And instantly I'm learning, man, I got to multiply myself out. I've already asked guys, hey, could you be on a security team? Could you lead that? Could you help me with registration? Can you help me do? So programming and learning, I am not a perfectionist at everything, and I'm not the best at everything. I am weak here, here, and here, but you're really good at it. Could you help me with this? And I think another thing that youth pastors get in trouble with a lot is they don't know how to troubleshoot. I like IT. We had a problem getting this started and we finally figured it out.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do one thing and it doesn't work. You do another thing and it doesn't work. The third thing, it doesn't work, and you're burned out and you're tired and you're just blown. You can't stop and think, man, to have a guy or a lady, somebody that's been there, hey, man, let's take a breath. Let's pray about this. Let's seek after what your heart is. Like, why is this a big deal? I sat in an office yesterday dealing with a situation I've been going through, and a guy that's not in ministry, he's our school director, is like, hey man, I used to be a football coach. And he started explaining the situation I'm in as looking at it through the lens of a football coach. And I left there going, wow, God, if you wouldn't have put this guy in my life today, I might be so mad and frustrated that I'd do something stupid, and
Mhm.
throw my hat in and be done, and I want to be that guy that helps troubleshoot those things in our life. And I have people that do that for me, so I also think we do a horrible job as a church passing the torch.
Yeah.
There's a new Barner study that came out over the last 10 years. We see that the median age has increased by 10 years for some senior pastor positions. And, some of the questions I asked was, is that because we don't have enough people to fill the spots that are empty? I mean, you look around, churches are missing youth pastors, children's pastors, senior pastors. Some of them are missing 4 positions in one church. And it's just outrageous, So, like, are we not passing the torch? Are we scared to pass the torch? Do we not have enough people to fill it? Is it a financial thing? I can't retire, or I can't, do this because of my finances. What? So, I mean, there's a lot of that stuff in coaching. When you build a relationship with somebody and you love and you care for them, you can be open, you can be honest, you can have those conversations. They're not afraid to say, hey, man, I really need help with this. This flopped. All right, let's look at it. What was your heart behind it? What was your mind behind it? What did that person ask right before you got up to teach on a Wednesday night that just threw you all out of whack? How do we get you to recenter? Just those type of things. So, I think having that older person, wiser person, somebody that's been there, whatever you want to say, it's good. And it's those things that we don't get taught when we're in college and seminary, where the rubber meets the road. And let's be honest, where we live and where we work, you can't divide those. A mechanic can leave the car shop and go home, and that's what he does for a living. But when he's at home, he may be a book writer.
Yeah.
He may write short stories. But as youth pastors and pastors, ministry folks, whenever I go out to eat with my family, that's still the same person. Whenever I'm at church, that's the same person that's with my family. When I'm at camp, when I'm on vacation, like you can't take the coat off. It is who you are. So, how do you teach people that when colleges are 10, 15 years behind? So, yeah, that may have been a rabbit hole there, but something to.
Well, what I love is ultimately what we've covered. as far as like topics for coaching is, you know, between first building that relationship so that you can actually say the hard things that need to be said, but also like, this is what budgeting looks like. This is what programming for youth ministry looks like. This is what troubleshooting looks like. And I think all of that is incredible. And it's really keys to success when it comes to being a good mentor for somebody is being able to look at the different elements of youth ministry and say, hey, maybe you're strong in this area, but maybe you need a little bit of improvement here. And what are I love the I would say Dan has treated it. Dan and Doug both have really taught us well this idea of that target three mentality. Because I know you alluded to it earlier. We do it pretty much at every staff meeting. It's so important, and I'll make sure this is in the show notes, but it's this idea of what are three things that are going well in ministry, and we break down the different ministries. What's three things that didn't go so well, and what are some action steps that we can take to let those good things continue to be good, and the things that are weak, that we can actually work on those things and make the necessary changes that need to happen. And so I think that target three mentality is something that every church, every ministry needs to have, because ultimately it comes down to evaluation. What's working?
Well, and I think too, we all put blinders on when it comes to how we lead, what we do. Man, I just wish people would understand me. I wish people would get this. I wish people, and sometimes it's just we don't communicate well. And I'll be the first to tell you, hey, I'm not perfect. I'm never going to be perfect. I'm always going to make mistakes. I'm human. And man, I just, if I can love you well and I can encourage you and I can keep focusing you back to discipleship and loving parents and loving students, if I can keep you from making some of the same mistakes I've seen or done myself, like it's a win. But being that guy that's there for you through the thick and thin and the muck and the mire and the turns left and right, but also to be able to say, hey, David, man, I love you, but man, maybe we missed this. You do this well, you do this well, you do this well, but because I love you, I'm not going to let you continue to do this bad. What are the action steps to be able to improve that? Who are some people you can put around you that you get better with that? So yeah, man.
Yeah, I think it's key. We have to have it, and having those people. And so the challenge I want to leave you guys with that are listening: find somebody in your life that can coach you, that can mentor you, that you can build that relationship. And maybe you already have that person, and you just need to make it a little bit more formal, in the sense of saying, hey, can we meet Tuesday mornings for breakfast and have that conversation and be able to, talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. And that they're someone you can trust, that will tell you not just the things that you want to hear, but the things that you have to hear. I think that's so incredibly important. But then the other side of it too is, are you the kind of person that can be that for someone else? I think, we're in such a consumer society where we're always looking for somebody. I've been doing ministry for a long time, but I definitely want somebody to continue to challenge me to grow. But at the same time, I also have to be that guy who's willing to step up and say, hey, I'm here for you. And so whether that's somebody who's just starting out in youth ministry or someone who's been doing it for a while, but maybe are struggling with whatever it might be. So reach out to somebody, have a mentor in your life, but also be willing to be that for someone else. That's my challenge for you guys. Any closing words?
Man, I know youth ministry is hard. After the pandemic, kids have changed. And if for nothing else, I echo what David says, just find somebody that can be real and be honest, that you trust, that's outside of your staff, outside of your spouse, outside of your family. It may be the guy across the street. It may be the guy 30 minutes away. It may be the person an hour and a half away. But meet with them consistently, be open and honest with them. It may be even a leader within your church that you say, hey, listen, I need somebody to pour into me. I need somebody to be real and honest with me. But we may have to separate church and mentorship a little bit. Find a community leader. Find people that walk in different walks than you do. But most importantly, find somebody that loves Jesus, that's going to care about you, love you, that's going to be open and honest with you. And guys, I know it's tough, but we have been called to one of the most awesome professions in the world, to be able to mold and shape and come along parents. We get the opportunity to mold and shape students, and we get to do it with a lot of fun, with a lot of heartache, with a lot of heartbreak. But then we have that kid that accepts Christ, and we see them. And then we see those kids that walk off to college prepared for the world, and they kill it. And that makes it worth it. So keep fighting the fight you're fighting, and just keep pushing forward. The kingdom and the church is worth it.
Man, couldn't have said it better myself. That's so good, man. Well, we appreciate you being here, imparting the knowledge that you have, man, praying for your ministry. Dude, we'll talk to you later.
All right, man. Peace out. Appreciate it, man.
Yes, sir. Did you know that you can now support our podcast by becoming a Patreon member? Go to patreon.com/talkstudentmen, and you can check out how to sponsor our show, as well as the different perks that come with being a subscriber. If you can't support us financially, we ask that you do your part to get our podcast out to the greater student ministry audience. Share our podcast with your friends, your student pastor friends on social media. Tag us in a specific episode that really stood out to you. Either way, be sure to tag us in a post on your favorite platform by using @TalkStudentMen. Finally, if you would like to be on the show in the future, please reach out to us on social media, send us an email to podcast@studentministryconversations.org, and we would love to set up a time for you to join us. Until next time, have a really great week. We'll see y'all next week.